Hello and welcome to my channel. A couple of weeks ago, I was scrolling on TikTok and I came across the work of a young Australian comedian who also happened to be a Black woman. I will post her social media handle up here. I'm not going to show any of her content and I'll explain why in a second. But I came across her work and immediately I was thrilled. She was consistently telling stories. Well, not consistently, but the videos that were going viral were her telling stories about the choices that she had made while she was dating and the things that have happened to her and the crazy things that men have said or done. And I know I felt seen and I felt understood. As somebody who has not had or did not have, because I'm in a period of a very peaceful drought right now when it comes to dating, and it's been quite nice actually. But as somebody who has not, whatever, my life is not filled with conventional dating experiences whatsoever. And in fact, if you've been here on my channel for a while, then you know, initially my kind of content strategy was just to humorously, in my mind, humorously relive these experiences on the internet. I think I thought initially that I would maybe get a book deal out of it. I thought that I would maybe get like a movie deal. I don't know. But that was definitely a reason why I was churning out so many of those stories. Also, I found it so therapeutic, and I've already talked about that before on this channel in this space. But my point is that I had to stop for the very reasons that I observed that were happening to this young comic. And basically, I was looking at her content and I'm cracking up. I even reposted some of the videos that she made at the time to my Instagram story. And then no sooner than I had like reposted her and endorsed her with my whole chest, did I start to see other videos come up on my For You page. The bulk of these videos criticizing this comic and her content were made by other Black women. And one of them in particular was just titled, "Why Do Some Black Women Make Such Embarrassing Content?" And I was like, damn. So I went and I watched her video responding to this. And it was like watching the things that people used to say to me about me in response to the stories and things I used to share. It was like watching them from an objective place. Before, I had always been very reactive because I would get defensive. These were very, very harsh things this person was saying in response to this young comedian's content. She started off by saying, "I hate this woman." Then she went into detail about all the things that she finds wrong. And it kept going back to this idea of, because she's so open about things that have embarrassed her, she's embarrassing all of us seemingly being other Black women. And I was really shaken by that because I didn't understand why some people believe that because one person is exploring their story, their truth, the ridiculous things that have happened with them, other people take it as a slight to them. So I thought for a second, because like I said, I've heard similar critiques about myself. And I said, this is bigger than just respectability politics. Because she started off that critique with, "I hate this creator." And that's a very big and aggressive word, but I'm sure she meant every little bit of it. I think it almost crosses into a concept of a betrayal of sorts, as if every person, every Black woman that puts themselves out there in the world in some way or another owes other Black women something. And when we fail to give it, we have betrayed the whole of us. I just kept that in the back of my mind. And then recently this week, I had heard the name Sexy Red a lot. Now, I did not know who Sexy Red was. I looked her up. I found out that she sings a very colorful song about going to Pound Town. And then I realized I did know who she was. The point is that when I look at her, she's a young woman. She's capitalizing on the fact that she connects with a particular part of society and a particular way to socialize and way to look. She's talking about sex and sexual activities in a very aggressive and visceral way, which is not unlike the way a lot of female rappers speak about their bodies or speak about sex. I didn't find anything more gratuitous in her work than I've seen in Cardi B's or Megan Thee Stallion's. The only difference I would say would probably just be how she presents herself, but I've seen that before as well. And, I looked at her and I was like, she may not be for me, but she's for somebody, let it go. And then I started to see the criticisms about Sexy Red. And even though it wasn't the same language that was used for the Australian comedian, it was the same concept. She's embarrassing us. Through exploring herself, exploring her own individuality, connecting with others who might be able to relate to her sense of speech and the way she likes to express herself and the way she likes to dress and talk and whatever, she has now betrayed the image of Black women as a whole. And in some ways, she has failed to pay us what she owes us. And so it got me thinking, what do Black women really believe we owe each other? And when we fail to do that, Why is the punishment so devastating? Because in both of these women's cases, they were censured, they were criticized, they were basically condemned by the groups of women who were speaking up against them. And I want to say Sexy Red and the comedian are both kind of extremes. Let's talk about Simone Biles, a woman who, by all intents and purposes, is an outstanding example of Black excellence, right? To use that kind of outdated and cliche term, but she is. She's an Olympian. She's like one of the most awarded Olympians of all time. And yet, when she posted her wedding pictures a couple months ago, all of a sudden, she had betrayed us because her edges were not correct. Who was coming after her, and who was criticizing her, and who was censuring her, and who was condemning her? Women that look exactly like her. Over and over again, when Black women put themselves out there and are deemed to have, in some way or another, fallen out of code, they are punished severely. So I wanted to take a second and examine why I think that is, and why I don't agree with it, and what I think we owe each other instead. So let's start off with the concept of respectability politics. Respectability politics is not a new concept. It comes from this idea that marginalized communities will make an extra effort to limit the ways that they divert from the status quo. So for example, if you are deemed to be more respectable because you wear your hair a certain way, because you speak a certain way, because you wear a certain kind of clothes, because you worship a certain God, because you have a certain relationship status, then that is what those people are going to do. And anybody who does not do that must have attention brought to them in some kind of a way. We see this issue a lot, specifically with Black women. And I think it goes back to the concept of being a marginalized community. When Malcolm X said that Black women are the least protected group of people in the United States of America, he was not wrong. And I think nobody is more aware of that than Black women. So we know that there is a high price to pay if we do not come across as respectable. But I think what we've done is, instead of radically accept ourselves in all the ways that we come as a way of counter-defining what it means to be respectable, we've put ourselves in a tinier and tinier and tinier box, especially when there are those of us that attempt to put themselves out in the public eye. It is more contingent upon you to be more respectable, or you're going to hear about it. I also think it comes down to a scarcity mindset, this concept of representation and the fact that there are not a lot of us out there. There's not a lot of Black women out there. So if one person is not being respectable, if one person is off code, then it's absolutely going to reflect back to all of us, because people of color, specifically women of color, specifically Black women, do not get the advantage of being seen as individuals. And I have to disagree with this. And I think this is a reason why I'm not as incensed when I see certain types of things. I'm just like, let that person just be who they are. I don't have to listen to it. I don't have to follow it. It is what it is. And the reason is because I think that there are a plethora of different types of Black women being represented today, especially when you get to social media. We see Black women in tech. We see Black women who are single moms. We see Black women who are married moms. We see Black women who work in churches. We see Black women who are talking about deconstruction. We see Black women who are in academia. We see Black women who are comedians. We see so many different types of Black women represented in social media today. But I think your personal perception of whether or not that representation is enough depends on what you saw in your formative years. When you were first forming your idea of what the world looked like and who you could relate to, as far as who you saw in media and in film and TV and in the books that you read, I think that you take that feeling with you for the rest of your life. So if you didn't see enough people, you're going to always believe there aren't enough people. If you saw enough people, then you're going to always believe there are enough people. I think your mind can change when it comes to that scarcity mindset, but you have to be open to that change. And the more closely tied you are to the concept of respectability politics, the least likely you are to be open to the idea that it is possible for people from marginalized communities to look more than one way and still be able to earn respect. In college, I read a book called The Culture Code, and I've tried to go back and find it many times. So I don't know if it was a book or it was a paper, but we were in a marketing class and we had to read this book because basically we were given a product and we were told a specific demographic that we had to market it to. And the concept was, you can't market a product the same way to demographic A as you can to demographic B, because each social group is going to have its own code, its own set of values, ideas, and beliefs. And when it comes to Black women, I think we have some very specific codes that we have to abide by, or that we believe we have to abide by, in order to be accepted by the group and not seen as embarrassing or betraying the whole. I think we have a code of secrecy, meaning we don't tell all of the truth about being in these bodies. And if you go against that, well, you have betrayed us. So for example, if you hop on the internet and you speak truthfully about what it was like to feel rejected or what it was like to maybe not feel desirable, no, you've gone off code. You can talk about those things, but keep it quiet. What I have noticed is that there is an idea that if you say it out loud, then other people are going to say, oh, well, of course you feel that way. You're the most undesired group of women in America. Why are you bringing it up? And so because of that feared response, anyone who speaks about that secret, if that's a secret they happen to have, is seen as going off code. There's also ways that we feel maybe about the men in our community or about our potential for romantic relationships or our feelings about motherhood or our feelings about fertility. Those are all things that we are supposed to keep quiet because we don't want people outside of our community to use them against us as a measure of weakness. And if you are not quiet about those things, you are off code. Guess who has been off code a lot? Yeah. And I've had to hear about it. Okay, the next code I think we operate on is obviously the code of respectability. How we wear our hair, how you dress, how you present your body. I think this is why we get so tied up in the concepts of femininity and submissiveness and whether or not it's important and who you can and can't be in order to attract a man and what kind of dates you should go on. And even if you are more comfortable with this kind of date, don't do it because then you won't be respected and you're letting all men know that Black women don't deserve luxury dates. We really get so tied up in respectability that we throw individuality out of the window. So if one particular hairstyle works for one person because that's just what they happen to like, then that can't be their business because we're not allowed that individuality. If one particular person likes going on coffee dates for the first date because that's what's comfortable to them and that's what they happen to like, you can't do that because you're letting all women down by agreeing to something like that. Black women as a whole seem to be deeply entrenched in the concept of respectability, and it seems to wipe out the possibility of individuality. And so you do see reactions to different types of women who are not adhering to that code of respectability. And those reactions are visceral and they are loud, such as the reaction to Sexy Red or the reaction to the Australian comedian. If someone is seen as not presenting themselves as the best way possible, then they've let down the whole group. Not only is it unfair, but it can also be incredibly suffocating and encourage people never to really discover who they are. But that's the code of respectability. The other code I think we abide by as a group, or we try and abide by, is the code of spirituality. I cannot tell you how surprised I was that when I went to the Beyonce concert, and I did go, and it was good. I traveled for it. I wanted to travel for it. I had that experience. Anyway, I went to the concert and I was surprised that there weren't people standing outside with signs that said, she's a demon, she's a demon. And I'm not going to get too much into this, but I will just say that this isn't just a Black woman thing. This is kind of like a Black culture thing in general. The Black church is Black culture. And so if you are looking into or trying to figure out or trying to just ask questions about or speaking about or poetically including references to spirituality that is not Christian monotheological spirituality, you are going to hear about it. The criticism is going to come. The censure is going to come. The abandonment is going to come. And that's why I think the song Church Girl is so important to not only Beyonce, but I was watching a couple of TikToks about this song and how important it is to a lot of Black women, because I think the reality of being a Black woman oftentimes goes far against the reality of the westernized puritanical Christianity that's often presented to Black women. This incongruent existence creates a cognitive dissonance in a lot of Black women's heads. And so when Beyonce says, nobody can judge me but me, I was born free. I mean, when I tell you, people are in tears when they hear that line in that song, because spirituality being practiced in a specific way is it's a big part of the code of being a good Black woman, of being the right kind of Black woman. And if you're not doing it right, then you're going to have to hear about it. And once again, that's unfair and it is suffocating, but it is a reality. When you combine all three of these codes together, let's say you have somebody that knows that they present well, they've got that respectability down, they keep certain things a secret. So yeah, they might know what it feels like to go out in the world with a certain kind of nose, but you're not going to hear about it. It's not your business. And they practice the right kind of spirituality. When you have all of those things together, there is a moral superiority that is created. And when that moral superiority crashes with reality, you get explosions. You know, I titled this video, What Do We Owe Each Other as Black Women? But I also think we have to talk about the fact that a lot of us also take an ownership into the lives and the representation of other Black women. There is a sense of, I'm going to claim you until you make me upset. Now, I do want to say when it comes to that sense of ownership that Black women can sometimes express over each other, that sense of naturally claiming each other until you mess up, I want to say that sometimes this does work in our favor. For example, we saw last week with Chloe and Funky Geneva. I don't know how many times I have heard Black women attack Chloe Bailey. I don't know how many times I've heard people in general attack her. But when someone else on the outside of the group decided to come for her in the ways that he did, oh my God, hellfire went up. I think Black women, on top of being each other's worst enemy, are also each other's greatest supporters. Another person that I saw recently, though, that we have stepped in and like protected, and I say we like I've done anything, but Pinky Doll. Pinky Doll is a Black NPC streamer. She streams on TikTok. She also has a adult career where she does things there. But recently they had the Streamy Awards, and people were very surprised because Pinky Doll is not a light-skinned, blonde-haired woman, like she appears to be on her streams, but she is a brown-skinned Black woman. And I expected, when this news came out, I expected for the think pieces to come out. I expected for people to be firing off in comment sections. I expected for Pinky Doll to get canceled because, well, she was light skin fishing, right? She was using features of another group in order to be able to move forward in society in a specific way. However, I think because people know, it's kind of like comedy, right? If I make a joke, it's fine as long as I'm punching up, but I can't punch down. And I think because so often Black women are placed on the bottom rung of desirability, on the bottom rung of value, and we know it. And it's a system that we constantly have to tussle with, both in our minds and in the world. I think what's interesting is we all said, well, what's the problem here? And I say we all, but I can't read every comment on the internet. I thought that was interesting that Black women were like, what is the problem here? She knew what she had to do in order to get the bag. She did it. We see no issue. I also think it had to do with the world that she's doing it in. She's in a virtual world where people are dressing up as pigs. They're dressing up as fairies. They're dressing up as, there's one lady that I've seen, she was a squid. And I think in this world, if we're going to accept that people can go in and create themselves as avatars and use that image that they're creating to make money from an audience that wants to see that and interact with that image, then why can't she do that? I think the fact that she is legitimately coming from a simulated world, I think that's what makes the difference. But regardless, she was protected. When Black women step forward and protect each other in all iterations of who we try and be, I think that is when we are at our best. So then I go back to my question of, what do we owe each other? Because when I see people making the criticisms in the comments and using words like hate and speaking from this just well of bitterness and disappointment, and they're proclaiming to be embarrassed and this person reflects badly on all of us, et cetera, et cetera. My question is, why do you believe that they owe you their own individual expression of their identity? Why does it have to matter to you? And it should not. I believe what we owe each other instead is space and compassion and perspective. And that protection that we all rose up and gave Chloe Bailey last week, that protection that we offered for Pinky Doll, hey, let her do what she got to do. She's a Black woman. She is one of us. I think we should offer it to every single Black woman.
Okay, it wouldn't be me if I didn't take a moment to pause and offer a little bit of extra reflection here. But sometimes protection is silent. Sometimes protecting someone else's right to explore their own individuality, follow their own journey, even if you may not agree, means that all you're choosing to do is not directly come forward and censure and criticize and condemn them. I'm not saying, and I don't believe that everybody is going to be worthy of a platform or everybody is going to be your cup of tea when it comes to their platform. There are so many Black artists, content creators, and, whatever, musicians, actors that I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Oh, I don't like that person. I don't like what they do. That's not my cup of tea. But I would never, unless that person was doing specific harm to themselves or to their own community in some way, their personal community, I would never make the kind of content that I've seen aimed at Sexy Red, that I've seen aimed at the comedian, that I've seen aimed at Chloe Bailey, that I've seen aimed at me. I wouldn't do that. And I do want to say too, I'm also wanting to make the distinction between censoring and condemning somebody that you don't even know versus things that might happen in your personal life. Our personal relationships, I think we can look at a little bit more critically and we can analyze a little bit differently. I mean, we still should be aiming to protect and, speak to people with a sense of restorative justice rather than a sense of condemnation. But what gets me is people condemning and criticizing people that they don't know. they don't even know them, and they're coming at them with all this anger and this ire and using words like hate and I can't stand. And it's just like, you don't even know this person. Why are you letting them take up so much space in your heart and in your mind? It doesn't make any sense to me. And then at the end of the day, we want to sit back and scream, oh, protect Black women, or how do we do this, or what? And I just don't agree with that. So I do want to go ahead and insert this here. I know you're not going to get along with everybody. I know that you're not going to approve of everyone. Okay, let's continue.
And then I thought about, I said, what is it about someone else's expression of identity that often triggers someone else so much? And I think what it comes down to is it reminds you of something in yourself that you're trying to bury, that you don't want to come to terms with, that you have decided is terrible. I'm not bothered by Sexy Red because she's so outside of who I am that it doesn't matter to me what she does. However, I was bothered. I was really bothered when all that femininity content was super popular. I was really bothered when all of that, let's be classy and elegant. When I see that, I get so angry because I've lived a life where people have made me feel a type of way about my particular expression of femininity. People have made me feel as if I'm lacking when it comes to this or that. So when I see something like that, it triggers something in me and it makes me upset. And I'm like, oh, I wish people wouldn't do that. But honestly, let them do what they want to do. If I don't like it, I don't have to watch it. Another comment that gets to me sometimes that people will make when they feel like a Black woman has fallen off of code and she's embarrassed us all and oh no, she's betrayed us, is when people say this is why our community won't go anywhere, why we'll never get anywhere. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Again, like I said earlier in the video, every day I see Black women in tech. I see Black women graduating from medical school. I see Black women teaching. I see Black women raising families. I see Black women getting married. I see Black women traveling solo. I see Black women supporting each other. One particular woman's actions, one particular person's choices does not speak for the whole. We all want peace. We all want respect. And most importantly, I think we want to live in a world where we are perceived with just as much value and worth as any other group of women. But it starts with us first. That radical acceptance, that compassion, that understanding, that perspective. If we want other groups of people to give it to us, it starts with us first. So I wanted to just talk about this really quickly. I had seen some things online that had kind of bothered me. Please feel free to share your thoughts on the topic if you have any at all in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.